While we get the slides going up, all right, great, thank you so much. Let's test this out. There we go, perfect, great. Good morning. Let me ask you a question right off the bat. Raise your hand, don't be shy. How many of you in the room are anti-relationship? Just against relationships? Now, I get it, okay? Now, sometimes first thing in the morning you would say, I'm definitely anti-relationship. Before I've had my coffee, I'm definitely anti-relationship. What I mean by that is raise your hand and be honest if you feel like creating and destroying relationships is a good fundraising strategy. I got that? No. You're going to create relationships and you're going to tear them down. No? No one. Not one person. Okay. I don't like to assume. I really don't. So let me give you the opposite. How many of you in the room think that creating meaningful relationships with your stakeholders, with donors, is an effective fundraising strategy? Okay, I think we're at 100%. But just to make sure that we cover all of our bases, did anyone not raise their hand? Is there anyone on the fence? Does anyone kind of go, you know, honestly, I can see both sides of this. We're kind of trying to figure out which way our organization should go. So is anyone on the fence about whether building good or bad relationships is good for fundraising? No. Well, okay. I have to change my plans. This whole presentation is about how to create toxic relationships with donors. That's what makes donor stewardship one of the most difficult and frustrating parts of fundraising. Because one, it is such an obvious, surface level, easy to grasp concept. We all agree that building relationships with our donors is what we ought to do. We're all in agreement on that. We all know that it's important. But yet it's so incredibly hard to do day after day after day. The execution of that very simple concept of building relationships is hard. And when you have something that's so simple, but yet so difficult to execute, it can be frustrating. The second reason why it's difficult and can be frustrating is because when we talk about donor stewardship, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Can I be honest with you this morning? Yes. How many of you have heard this phrase? It's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. You heard that? Heard that phrase? Honestly, I'm tired of hearing that phrase. I am so over it. Is that what people say? I'm over that. The reason is because every session, not every, a lot of sessions, a lot of workshops, a lot of trainings that talk about donor stewardship just tell you 1,000 different ways the same thing. It's all about relationships. Well, we've already established that we want to build good relationships with our donors. We don't need more seminars, more sessions, just telling us in 1,000 different ways that it's important to build relationships. We get that. In all my years of fundraising, I have never not once heard an executive director or a development director say, I think our fundraising strategy is going to be creating toxic relationships with our donors, and they're going to love it. And it's going to allow us to raise more money. Never happened in the history of fundraising. We're all trying to build meaningful relationships with our donors. So what I want to do for you this morning is, one, I want to address some donor stewardship myths that are out there, because while it's an easy sort of concept to understand, there are myths about what it is and what it isn't. So I want to address 4 myths of donor stewardship, and then I'm going to give you 3 ways to evaluate your existing stewardship efforts, and more particularly, think about how you can use East Texas Giving Day to strengthen those relationships. So first, let me address a few myths. These are things that donor stewardship is not. First of all, donor stewardship is not acting like your donor's personal butler. You I hear laughing because you know that's how it can feel at times, right? Good stewardship is not being your donor's personal butler. It's not waiting on them hand and foot. And I know a lot of people that are very well-intentioned that get sucked into this myth, because most of the time as fundraisers, we're people pleasers. We want people to have a good experience. We want people to love the organization as much as we love it. So we can be servants. But the nature of this relationship is not what good donor stewardship is. Now, what I want to make clear is that I'm not saying that if a donor needs help, that you don't help them. So if you leave here and a donor calls and say, hey, I really need help or I need a ride, I need something. I'm not saying that you respond with, well, I'm not your personal butler. See ya, gone. That's what Kenny said to do. It's not what I'm saying. We want to be warm, we want to be helpful to our donors, but the nature of that relationship is not that you are their personal butler. So don't feel like it, and it's often self-imposed that we feel like that's what we have to be in order to be effective in donor stewardship. It's oftentimes self-imposed on ourselves. Myth number 2. Stewardship is not acting or trying to be your donor's BFF. Again, I've seen so many development directors and executive directors think that donor stewardship is about being best friends, being best buds with all the donors. We got to go do all the things together. We got to go to lunch every other week and laugh and have fun and talk about everything in the world except our organization, because we don't want to burden them with that. But our job is to be best friends with all of our donors. Again, that's a very well-intentioned approach. I see a lot of people with good intentions and good hearts fall into this trap because what it leads to is maybe a good relationship, a good friendship between the donor and the staff person of the nonprofit, but it oftentimes stays here and it never translates into meaningful work or engagement with the organization itself. You're just building a friendship, and that's it. We have to make sure that that relationship